Well, meanwhile, let's get to a former quarterback in the NFL, a former Super Bowl champion, where a saga and a case just continues to go on, but it seems like it is heating up. This is Brett Favre. You may have missed the story over the last couple of years. Favre is being alleged to use funds not correctly in the state of Mississippi, and he's testifying in front of a congressional hearing about the need for welfare reform on Tuesday. The communications director for the House Ways and Means Committee said the committee's website lists the hearing as a reform temporary assistance for needy families, and it states misuse of welfare funds leave poor families behind. Favre is one of a dozen defendants in a civil lawsuit seeking to recoup misappropriated funds. Now, he has denied all wrongdoing, and by the way, has not been criminally charged, but he could face questions from the committee about what he knew from the origin of the money for a volleyball facility at his alma mater at Southern Miss, as well as a company called Provacus. A company developed a concussion drug in which Favre was the top outside investor and stockholder. So we'll keep an eye on that. Naturally, this case eventually will come to an end. But again, very important to note that he has not been criminally charged in anything. Meanwhile, college football has taken a different landscape, and I feel like we're getting used to it already, and that's a good thing. It's also a good thing that some of these conferences that have been around for a long time could end up surviving. The next one that we'll discuss here is the rumors surrounding the Mountain West Conference. Several schools are expressing interest in joining the conference. Here are a couple of them. Now, they're not big names, but the beat does roll on here. Maybe they'll be bigger in the future. Sacramento State and New Mexico State. Those are two schools that could face realignment and head to the Mountain West. This news comes 1 week after 4 Mountain West programs announced their intention to leave for the Pac-12. So potentially 2 new teams joining, and certainly we don't want to see any of these conferences go away. Pac-12 naturally seems to be surviving. Maybe the Mountain West will pick up the pieces, find some other teams to join as well. All right, as we mentioned, National Football League is back yet again tonight. The game is in East Rutherford, New Jersey. It is the New York Jets facing off against the New England Patriots. Patriots have been fantastic thus far through 2 games. They've covered both spreads. This will be the biggest test, though, without doubt, on the road here in New York during the week, short week. You may say, what about the Bengals? Wasn't that a big test? Yes. A little different, though, playing on the short week. And Jets haven't beaten the Patriots in prime time since 2008. But Tom Brady was on those teams, and now he is not. How about Jordan Love returning to practice for the Green Bay Packers just 12 days after his knee injury at the season opener? Malik Willis has started. He did a really nice job for them, including a win over the Indianapolis Colts this past week. But right now, Love is practicing. He is listed as questionable. And beyond that, the Packers haven't put much out there, although they're going to have to today on Thursday's NFL injury report. Love did speak to reporters yesterday, saying how nice to be back on the field, but for now, he's day-to-day.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of boxes. Obviously, I think getting back to practice and doing that and just, feeling what it feels like to take those drops, being the live fire, things like that. But like I said, we're taking it day by day. The trainer's doing a great job kind of monitoring me, seeing how I'm doing and how I'm reacting to everything. And, they'll be the ones to clear me when the time comes.
Seems like there's a chance that we could see Love back this week. Well, if the quarterback position is the most important in the NFL, then losing your quarterback is significant. But if there is a team in the NFL that has lost more players than any other in the National Football League to injury, it has to be the Los Angeles Rams. They put Jonah Jackson and John Johnson on injured reserve yesterday. But interestingly enough, Cooper Kupp did not join those players in Puka Nacua on IR. So does that necessarily mean that Kupp could be back within the next few weeks? Sean McVay weighed in on that possibility.
I mean, we haven't finalized. I mean, we put those other 2 on there. That's still a possibility, but there's a chance just based on where our bye is, things like that he could get back before those 4 games. Yeah, it's not more clarity. It's kind of the same as what it was before. It's just a matter of, okay, we have so many, we don't necessarily need that spot. So because of the amount of injuries that we have, if there is a chance, neither one of those other 2 that we put on would have ever been able to be back before that 4 games, plus that bye week not necessarily counting. So for us, that was kind of what went into not necessarily putting him on there yet. But I would say this, as of right now, we won't do that, but it's not like that decision's been finalized. But as of right now, we're not going to go that direction with him.
All right, so for now, no IR for Cooper Kupp. So fantasy players out there, that's your fantasy note for the day. The Pro Football Hall of Fame has put out the list for potential first-time Hall of Famers this year. It includes Eli Manning, former Super Bowl MVP. It would seem to be a lock for a first ballot Hall of Famer. Also, Luke Kuechly is on the list, retired early, but played fantastic in the NFL for a long time. Terrell Suggs, best kicker of all time in the NFL. Adam Vinatieri is on the list. Also, some other players under consideration who have been on the list a long time. My buddy Fred Taylor from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Also, my buddy Richmond Webb from the Miami Dolphins. I'm just going to name my buddies. Those are my two buddies. I hope they get in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. All right, the Florida Gators, as you know, they're my buddies too. But they're having a hard time being my friend this season. It's not going well for them, and they're not going to have Eugene Wilson III this week. Their great wide receiver is going to be out against Mississippi State. Gators on the road in the SEC. Early game, hoping for the best in this one, but certainly after last week, can't be all that optimistic. Penn State safety Kevin Winston out with a long-term injury. He had 60 tackles, 2 fumble recoveries, interception, and was just a really good player in college football last season. He's considered a top 3 safety prospect, going to be out for an extended period of time. Wake Forest sets the Oregon State series to replace the Ole Miss game that they've had previously on their schedule. And tonight there's one game in college football. Appalachian State is taking on South Alabama. And right now, App State is 7.5-point favorites. The total is 62.5 tonight. Good games tomorrow night in college football. NFL with the better game probably tonight. Okay, we're on Shohei Ohtani watch. 50-50 gets a little bit closer. Yesterday, Ohtani did not homer in Miami, but he did steal a base. So this puts him at 49 stolen bases on the season, 48 home runs, minus 350 on FanDuel to do 50-50 on the season. No one has ever done this in the history of Major League Baseball. Miami plays LA today at 4:40 Eastern. He needs 2 home runs and 1 steal to get it done today. If not, I'm sure he'll get it done this weekend. Meanwhile, the Dodgers did beat the Marlins yesterday 8-4. The Padres also won. So no separation from LA and San Diego in the NL West. The Tigers are red hot. Best team in baseball over the last month. They beat the Royals. The Twins losing extras to the Guardians. And Detroit's a half game out of the wild card. How about that? Tariq Skubal right now is the star pitcher, potential Cy Young Award winner for the Tigers. And who knows, if they get in, maybe they do some damage. But for now, Skubal says they're taking it game to game.
I think that our team's doing a really good job of just being day by day, game by game. I think that's it starts with AJ and his influence on all of our guys too. So we're taking it day by day. We need to keep winning, and hopefully we can control our own destiny down the stretch.
Also in the National League, the Brewers have clinched the National League Central, so they were partying into the night last night. Braves win, Mets win, so no separation there. Over in the American League East, the Yankees clinched the playoffs. They partied last night. The Orioles lose again to the Giants, so getting closer and closer to that division. Craig Kimbrell was DFA'd by the Orioles, by the way. He's had a tough second half of the season. Another tough game for the White Sox. They lose again, 36-117 on the season. They need 7 wins in their last 9 to avoid 120 losses, which is pretty insane. We'll be back with more Newswire after this. Welcome back to Newswire here on SportsGrid. We got Matthew Waters in the house from Legal Sports Report. There's an upcoming political election. If you are unfamiliar, some people may bet on that or not, depending on how you feel. We'll dive a little into that in just a minute, but let's bring Matt in. And Matt, great to be back with you here ahead of another football weekend. But we're starting off actually with baseball here on the show. I read about the story over at Legal Sports Report. The Major League Baseball Players Union, apparently, to me, Matt, it feels like woke up one day, went online, saw their players, listed on their sites with pictures and things like that, and said, "Wait a minute here, they're making all this money, and we're not." So are they allowed to do this? Or is this a legitimate lawsuit? Are they looking for a settlement here? Tell us more about it.
Yeah, well, Craig, you know as well as I do, are they allowed to do this, and is it a legitimate lawsuit, or 2 totally different things in the U.S.? Look, here, you're right. It did have a bit of a feeling of they woke up and saw this, right? Because it's not necessarily new for these 4 sports books, Bet365, DraftKings, FanDuel, and Underdog. Remember, Underdog does have a sports book in North Carolina, even though they are primarily daily fantasy sports focused. But it's not that they started using player pictures in 2024. It's just that now the MLB the MLB Players Inc., which is the arm of the players that basically licenses their name, image, and likeness, they are saying, look, these agreements that we have that the league has with you guys doesn't necessarily cover this. And it's interesting when you read through, there are two separate lawsuits, Craig, one in New York and one in Pennsylvania, which may wind up being something that's argued over back and forth. But it's interesting when you read them. The two lawsuits are basically identical, saying that, look, these pictures are being used on there, and do you really need to see Bryce Harper's face next to a prop bet that's saying, will he hit over 0.5 home runs or not tonight? Do you really need to see his face to know? Isn't seeing his name enough to know who you're betting on? And then they liken it to NFL. And if you look, they include screenshots, and I went on and looked myself, and Jalen Hurts prop didn't have Jalen Hurts' picture next to it. In fact, none of the NFL props had the specific player's picture next to it. Now, you have to wonder why that is, right? I have not looked at any of the contracts that are involved in this. It could be something as simple as maybe the NFL made it very clear that was not to happen, and maybe the MLB, the books thought they had a little more leeway here and there. But look, NIL rights, how long have we been talking about those now? Everybody knows how valuable they are. And the MLBPI is saying, look, Bryce Harper's face, all these players' faces, this is valuable. And you can't just use it just because they want to be compensated to be using their likeness in this way. It also pointed out that Underdog was using the names, images, and likenesses on social media accounts. So they said, now you're not just promoting, it's not informational when you go to that point, it's promotional when you get to that point, and the players should be paid for that. So we're going to keep an eye on this. The two jurisdictions is interesting, Craig. FanDuel and Underdog are both located in New York. So New York Supreme Court has jurisdiction over that. Bet365 is an international company, and DraftKings is based out of Massachusetts. The lawsuit is in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, and they say that they can do that under state law because a substantial part of the events took place within the court's jurisdiction. I'm obviously not a legal expert, but I would think that they're going to come back and say, this is a little bit of jurisdiction shopping here. So I don't know that we'll get off to a quick start in any of these, but no update yet from either of these books pushing back. Nobody wanted to comment. Some didn't even respond to the request for comment. You know how that goes. So we'll be watching this. We'll be seeing what happens. But it is interesting that all of these books clearly saw a difference between what they could do with MLB and what they could do with NFL. And where does that idea stem from, I think is what we really need to find out here.
Yeah, for me, I mean, at least in my opinion, it may stem from the daily fantasy sites. I mean, they've been using the name and likeness of these players for years and years. I don't know if they had any previous agreement there. Maybe they're looking for something different, but I think we haven't reached the tip of the iceberg with this story. All right, now let's get into the election here. We don't touch on politics at all here on the show. Generally speaking, we never do. But our direction here isn't necessarily about who the winner is, but about how we get to the winner and can you bet on it. Now, there was one specific operator that was taking bets on politics and have been for a long period of time. I guess I'm surprised to see that this was their main thing, was to take bets on this in some way, and now they're not even doing that. So what is going on here? It basically, I guess the bottom line, Matt, is anyone taking bets on legally here in the United States on who's going to win the presidential election?
That's kind of a gray area. And Craig, let me just get to my endorsement here. No, of course I'm kidding. Look, politics aside, betting on politics is something that is a gray area in the U.S. Remember, West Virginia actually tried to implement this a couple of years back, and it was quickly turned off. but there are companies out there. Predict It was one of them that was given an okay to operate, and it was taking small amounts of money, right? That's why it was given this okay. Basically, what this turns out to be when you're talking about betting on the election is you're trading future event contracts. In simpler terms, that could be like on this company, Kalshi, that we're talking about. You can bet on what jobs numbers are going to be like. You can bet on federal rate cuts. You can bet on Grammy nominations and U.S. elections. The problem is that the Community Futures Trading Commission rejected Kalshi to offer this betting on the election for a couple of reasons. One of it is that they wanted to have a larger exchange than Predict It. Predict It was seen more of an educational product instead of a flat-out betting product. But Kalshi wanted to go a little bit bigger than that. And they actually started to, because they got this ruling that said, yes, you can go and offer this. And then quickly, within hours, an injunction came down saying, no, you can't. But within those hours, they had already started to go live on their site with election betting. Others started to say they were going to do the same. I don't know. I don't think that we will get legal U.S. election betting from Kalshi this time around, Craig. There's just too much red tape involved with it. But it's a really interesting and confusing case. When you start to talk about the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, this is the body that came down on Enron all those years ago for their weather trading and offering what they said at the time was an illegal exchange for those types of things. So this has a lot of history to it. It has a lot of deep points that are difficult to understand. But basically, betting on the election is looked at as a contract. And naturally, you've been allowed to do that in the U.S. before.
Yeah, no, I think so. And, again, politics aside, do we really know in the end? I mean, there's reports saying we're not going to know who the winner is maybe for a week after the election anyway. All right, let's wrap it up with this story that we've been discussing all week long here, Matt. DraftKings and FanDuel potentially looking to raise prices. What does that mean? Does it mean the odds? And I asked this question, I believe it was to Pat the other day. How do they think they could just simply get away with minus 130s and minus 140s without people noticing?
I don't think it's going to be that, Craig. I think we'll see it baked into futures and different odds like that. I don't think it's going to be right in your face in the NFL lines. But yeah, more on that on Legal Sports Report for sure.
All right, check out legalsportsreport.com.